lovely and bright, but I didn't bring my sunglasses today. Anyway, hello, welcome back to the Alban allotment. It's been a little while since I've done a video, apologies for that. It's just because I haven't really been in the right headspace. There's been some good stuff going on that's kind of been a bit mentally draining, and I just haven't really been in the right frame of mind to be doing videos. And if I'm not in the right frame of mind, then the content won't be that good. So I thought I'd pause it for a little while, get back in the right mindset, and then get back into it. So here I am today, and in today's video, we are going to be attempting to make some irrigation for the greenhouse that's behind me. It's been a bit tricky to keep this one watered because it's quite far from the water butt, the mains fed water butt. It's right at the other end of the plot, and I have done something to my arm which makes it quite difficult to carry things. So it's been a bit of a tedious process to try and keep this watered. Now we do have these water butts either side. Obviously there's been absolutely no rain, not no rain, but there's been hardly any rain, so these haven't really filled up. But even when they are filled up, we found that we weren't really using them properly anyway. Originally when we put them in, the taps were facing on the outside, once we'd started to kind of build up the plot around it, we weren't really being able to get to the taps particularly well, and also where they've been flooded a few times, foundations underneath them kind of came away and they've ended up like tipping and needing re-leveling. So I've done that, I've re-leveled them, and I've also raised them up on some of the bricks that we got from my mum's as well. So it's a really nice use for some of those bricks. So we can now easily get watering cans underneath them if we need to. But unfortunately they fill really, really slowly from watering cans. And they do hold a reasonable amount of water. I think it's like something like 200 litres or something like that. So they hold a reasonable amount of water, but they just take too long to fill up a watering can. And also once the water's gone, then obviously the water's gone. So what we decided to have a go at doing instead is making some irrigation. And because we've got two water butts, I thought actually it might work that we can have one of the water butts feeding the irrigation for the inside of the greenhouse, so running all the way around the inside of the greenhouse, and then the other water butt maybe feeding an irrigation system down this no-dig bed, which is kind of where you are at the moment. It may work, it may not work. I've got a couple of things which I hope will help. So obviously I have some hose. We've had this for a while. We bought it in a half price sale. I've had an attempt at making some prototypes already. It's a 1/2 inch hose, just like a normal standard hose, and pretty malleable. It's pretty easy to make holes in, which is good. I've got some emitters, they're called. So these I'm hoping will help because they are adjustable. So you can screw them and unscrew them, and it will change the amount of water that's allowed out of them. So you can turn it into like a drip irrigation or more of a spray irrigation depending on the pressure that you have. And you can take them off entirely as well, just leave an open hole. So the reason I'm hoping that will help is because as the water pressure or the water level changes in these water butts, the pressure from the water as it's coming out of the tap will vary. So the less water in there, the less pressure there is to force the water out. So as the water level changes, the amount of water that comes out of these emitters will also change. By making them adjustable, hopefully it will mean that we can keep the right level of irrigation throughout the whole system, regardless of how much water pressure there is. I've also got myself a hole bunch. So this is specifically for making irrigation holes. So you put the hose in there, and then you press it down. Oh, they really help them out. And then it makes a hole in the hose, but it doesn't make it go all the way through, so it just does it on one side, and then you can push in the emitters. I've also got some of these ground pegs, and they are specifically designed to hold irrigation hoses, which are 1/2 inch irrigation hoses, and that will keep it off the ground, and I'm hoping will mean that it will keep out some of the dirt that may get into the emitters, again keeping it quite a consistent flow around the system. And then I've also got some of these hose clips which will be used to actually attach the hose to the tap on the water butts and stop it from coming off. So these are just those, there's a few different sizes here. You just tighten them until they're tight enough, and then it will just grip onto the tap. And then finally some 1/2 inch bungs as well, which will bung up the end of the hose if we need to. One of the ends of the hose is already sealed off, but because we're going to be making two, we will probably need, if there's enough hose to make two, then we will probably need to bung up one of the ends. So that is what they are for. So let's have a go at doing this. I think the first thing that we need to do is figure out exactly how much hose to use inside, and then we'll see what we've got left and whether we've got enough to do the outside as well, but more important to do the inside really. So the very first thing is just to lay it out inside. So, and then figure out also where the emitters are going to go. So it's going to be a bit fiddly because there's already tomatoes in there, but that actually does help a little bit because it means that we know roughly where plants are going to be spaced out in the future as well. So I can kind of get the emitters hopefully where we want them, between the plants or at the same level of the plants, depending on what we decide to do. The first step is figure out how much hose we need. So first of all, we just need to kind of lay out where the hose is going to be to roughly get some sort of an idea of the length that we need. So first of all, we're going to attach the hose to the tap on the water by pushing it on and then using one of those little hose clips things. I'm just going to screw it on so that it can't pop back off again, and it holds it nice and securely while I'm trying to figure out how much length I need. Cool, now that's on. So like I say, I'm just going to roughly lay it out at this point, so not going to like weave it through the plants like properly at this point. Just going to lay it around so I can get some sort of an idea of how much hose I'm going to need, and then give myself a little bit extra at the end for a little bit of wiggle room in case I need to readjust it at some point later. So give that a good snip, and then straight away I'm just going to put a bung on the end to stop any dirt from getting in it straight away, and obviously it means that then once we run the water through it, it's not going to just run out the end. Okay, now that the bung is on, here's where we need to start trying to feed it through the plants delicately without causing too much damage. A bit tricky, needed to kind of unroll it as I was going and it kept getting kinked up, but it kind of got there in the end. So just weaving it through and trying to kind of place it roughly where it's going to end up, and then after this the next step will be to do it a bit more tidily to make sure that kind of it's a bit straighter and stuff, but for now just trying to get it actually in between the plants. And then once that's done, I'm gonna use those hooks, those ground pegs, to kind of just hold it in place for now. I'm not going to use too many of them at this stage. I'll just use them to lift it up off the ground and try and get the hose in a more precise place where we actually want it to be, so that way we can figure out where emitters are going to go. So that's how it looks at the moment. So we've just got a few ground pegs in, it's raised up off the ground, and it's relatively straight and weaved through the individual tomato plants all the way around. This is the hole punch, a bit closer up. So it's really easy to use unless you have a gammy arm like I do, but you literally just put it around the hose and just push it in like any other hole punch, and it makes a nice hole on one side. Now it can be a little bit tricky to get the emitters in, but that's kind of what you want, because once it's in you don't want it to pop back out and you don't want the water to leak out of the join, you want it to come out of the emitter itself. So it takes a little bit of work and a little bit of twisting, but it does go in eventually, and then it's a nice snug fit once it does go in. So then just need to do that for the rest of them. So I'm going to put an emitter about every tomato plant, thinking that's probably where we're going to do them in the future, and then we can always kind of shuffle the hose around if we put them in slightly different places next year, but the spacing is kind of the most important part. So there's basically one emitter per tomato plant in the greenhouse at the moment. This was actually quite tedious. I had to speed it up quite a lot because it took me a little bit longer than planned, just because it was quite difficult to get in, and then also each one was a bit of a faff to actually kind of push into the hole after you've made it. So then I'm just going round and adding more of those ground pegs either side of the emitters, so that it's a little bit tidier now, and that the emitters are definitely going to be kept up off the ground wherever there is an emitter. And it also means then we can kind of position the hose a bit more precisely as well, where we need it to go. Cool, so the water butt is now filled up, so time to turn on the tap and give it a go. So I did actually turn off all the emitters so that I can turn them on one by one. And at first it didn't really look like it was going to do very much at all. So you can see there's actually a reasonable size hole there once you take off the lid entirely. But once I screwed it off and screwed it back on again, it did eventually start to work. There we go. And the same with the next one. So because the water pressure is quite high at the moment, they're coming out quite strongly. But as the water pressure drops, it does turn into more of a drip system, which is fine. I think that's kind of what we would want anyway, because otherwise the water would go down too quickly. So yeah, as you can see, like they're all working pretty well, all just from that one water butt, and watering the ground quite nicely with absolutely no splashback onto the tomatoes. There we go. That worked out much better than I expected it to. I do think though, as the water pressure drops, it's going to turn into more of a drip irrigation system, but for now it's working pretty well. Also a little bit concerned about it clogging up as well, because the water in the water butts is not particularly clean, especially as the leaves drop in the autumn. It kind of gets a bit manky in the water butts, but for now it's working pretty well. And also when you screw the caps off of the emitters, there's quite a big hole, so if it does get clogged, hopefully we'll be able to just clean it out and then re-screw it back on. So hopefully not too big an issue, but we'll figure that out as we go. But for now, working pretty well. And I'm absolutely roasting in this greenhouse, so I think that is the end of today's video. I'm going to go home and have a nice cold drink and celebrate a job well done. I think pretty cool. So yeah, thank you very much for joining me in today's video. Thank you very much for subscribing if you already have. It means a lot to me. And hopefully now I'll be able to get back into the swing of doing some videos. This job particularly I've been waiting to do and waiting to share with you for a really long time, so I'm happy to finally have got that done. But that's it for today's video. So thank you very much for joining me, and hopefully I get to see you soon. So from me, Sergio and Poppy, take the very best of care, and we'll see you again soon in another video, hopefully next week. See you soon. Bye.